You're going to be a father. Claire said it with both hands wrapped around a white pregnancy test, like she was presenting evidence in court instead of dropping a grenade into my kitchen. Her mother stood beside her near the marble island, already crying, already smiling, already building a future in her head that somehow trapped me inside it. I stared at the thin pink lines, then at the date glowing on my phone screen beside my coffee mug. August 14th. Claire had landed from Cabo less than 30 hours earlier after a 10-day girls' trip that suddenly looked less like a vacation and more like a timeline problem. I stayed quiet long enough for her smile to tighten around the edges. That detail mattered. Claire always filled silence when pressure started climbing. The doctor estimated 5 weeks, she added quickly. Maybe 6. Early enough that they can't be exact. There it was. Too fast. Too polished. A rehearsed adjustment before I even asked the question. Her mother touched my arm like she was calming a nervous witness. Ethan, honey, this is amazing news. Amazing. That word floated around the kitchen while numbers slammed against the inside of my skull like loose bolts in a dryer. I work commercial pipeline contracts across West Texas. I track schedules for a living. Dates, fuel receipts, crew logs, hotel invoices. I know exactly where I stood every day for the last 2 months because my company audits every movement tied to a project. 3 weeks earlier, I spent 19 straight days outside Midland overseeing a pressure valve failure that almost cost us a $7 million contract. I slept in a trailer beside the site. My badge scans, truck GPS, fuel purchases, and payroll stamps backed every hour of it. Claire knew that, which meant she also knew conception timing carried sharp edges. She stepped closer and slid her arms around my waist. Her perfume carried that expensive citrus scent she bought before Cabo. Say something, she whispered. I looked down at her fingernails resting against my shirt. Fresh manicure. White tips. Tiny gold line near the cuticle. Same style from the Instagram photos her friends posted during the trip. Except one thing bothered me about those pictures. Claire appeared in every group shot except the final night at the resort. Missing for almost 18 hours worth of tagged photos and stories. At the time, I brushed it off. Adults disappeared during vacations. Now my brain started reopening every detail like a forensic accountant reopening closed books. You look shocked, her mother said softly. Shock had nothing to do with it. I felt calculation taking over. Cold. Methodical. The kind that settles in after trust fractures. Claire squeezed my side harder. Ethan. I forced a small smile because men in my position survive longer when they stop reacting emotionally and start collecting information. Yeah, I said calmly. I'm just trying to process everything. Relief flashed across her face too quickly. Another detail. She grabbed the pregnancy test and placed it beside my coffee like planting physical proof strengthened the story. Then she said the sentence that shifted the balance of power inside that kitchen. I already scheduled our first appointment for Friday. They'll need your insurance information before we get there. Our insurance. My name already inserted into paperwork I hadn't even seen yet. Claire moved fast when she wanted control of a situation. Joint accounts, mortgage refinancing, vacation packages. Every major decision came wrapped in urgency because urgency limits questions. I watched her mother hug her while Claire peeked over her shoulder at me for half a second. Fear lived in her eyes. Real fear. And right then my phone vibrated against the counter with a fraud alert from our bank. A charge for $4,862 at the Laguna Pearl Resort in Cabo had just posted to our joint account. Sweet upgrade. 2 guests. Claire saw the bank alert before I finished reading it. Her eyes snapped toward my phone for half a second, then back to me with that polished expression she used during arguments with customer service reps and HOA managers. Calm on the surface, calculating underneath. That must be the security deposit hold, she said quickly. The resort messed up a bunch of charges while we were there. I tapped the screen again. The timestamp showed the transaction. Processed 23 minutes earlier, long after checkout. My company trained me to study details because details decide liability when millions of dollars ride on pipeline failures. People lie in broad strokes. Systems expose them in numbers. A $4,000 hold for 2 guests. I asked. Claire folded her arms slowly. You are acting weird right now. There it was again. Pressure redirected back at me. She always attacked tone before facts. Her mother stepped in immediately like she had rehearsed the move. Ethan, Your wife just shared life-changing news, and you are interrogating her over vacation receipts? Claire lowered her eyes at exactly the right angle. Vulnerable, cornered, pregnant. Every visual in that kitchen pushed me toward one role: guilty husband. I leaned against the counter and studied her face instead of defending myself. Tiny tension pulled near her jawline every time silence stretched beyond 5 seconds. Claire feared silence because silence gave other people room to think. "Send me the invoice later," I said evenly. Relief flickered across her face again. Too fast. Too visible. She walked over and grabbed my coffee mug with both hands like she wanted to reset the atmosphere back into something domestic and harmless. "You are spiraling," she said softly. "I need support right now, Ethan. Stress is terrible during pregnancy." That sentence landed carefully. Pregnancy. Stress. Responsibility. She stacked emotional pressure before medical pressure before moral pressure. Layers. Smart. Except my brain had already shifted into audit mode. I excused myself and headed upstairs with my phone still in my hand. Claire called after me once, then stopped. She knew pushing harder risked triggering resistance. Inside my office, I shut the door and opened our joint banking app. 3 more resort transactions sat buried under regular purchases. Private dining. Spa package. Premium suite extension. Total charges: $8,214. The suite booking listed double occupancy for 6 nights. Claire told me she shared a standard room with her friend Nicole. I pulled up Nicole's social media next. Group photos. Beach selfies. Pool drinks. 4 women tagged in. Almost every post. Claire vanished from the timeline midway through day 3 until checkout morning. I enlarged one image from the rooftop bar and spotted a reflection in the glass behind Nicole. A man stood beside Claire wearing a white polo and a silver Rolex. Tall, athletic build, hand resting low against Claire's back. My stomach tightened. Then I recognized him. Ryan Mercer, regional sales consultant for a medical supply company out of Dallas. I met him once 8 months earlier during a charity dinner Claire forced me to attend. Smooth smile. Expensive watch. The kind of man who memorized people's weaknesses before appetizers arrived. I opened our phone records next. Claire deleted messages constantly, but phone logs still tracked activity. One number repeated through the Cabo trip almost every night between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. 47 calls total over 10 days. I copied the number into a search database tied to one of my old contractor subscriptions. Ryan Mercer. My jaw locked hard enough to hurt. Suddenly, the pregnancy announcement felt less like shocking news and more like stage 4 of a plan already in motion. Then my office door cracked open slightly. Claire stood there holding 2 glasses of water with a soft smile pasted across her face. "I think we should add you to the baby appointment paperwork tonight," she said gently. "The clinic asked if you wanted your name on the paternity forms early." Claire held my gaze after she mentioned the paternity paperwork. That word hung between us like a fishing hook waiting for somebody to bite. Most men would have exploded right there. Most men would have grabbed the phone records, the resort charges, the hidden calls to Ryan Mercer, and dumped every accusation onto the floor at once. Anger gives cheaters exactly what they need. Chaos destroys timelines. Calm preserves evidence. I took the glass from her hand and nodded once. "Friday works," I said. Her shoulders loosened slightly. Another tiny release. Claire kept reacting like somebody running drills she memorized in advance. She stepped into the office farther and leaned against my desk. "I knew you would come around," she whispered. Wrong phrase. Come around implied resistance already existed before the conversation even started. People reveal more through assumptions than confessions. I closed the banking app before she could see the screen and asked the question carefully. "How long have you known?" Claire blinked once. "About the pregnancy?" "Yeah. A few days." Too quick again. She answered timing questions faster than emotional ones. My brain kept stacking inconsistencies like engineering reports before a failure analysis meeting. Her mother called from downstairs asking whether we wanted dinner reservations for Friday after the clinic appointment. Claire smiled toward the hallway before looking back at me. "Mom already told the family," she said softly. "Everybody is excited." There it was. Social pressure deployed ahead of verification. Family expectations create leverage. Public celebration creates guilt. Claire boxed situations in before anyone could examine the structure underneath them. I watched her leave the office, then opened my laptop again. My company gave senior project managers access to forensic accounting software after a subcontractor fraud case 2 years earlier. Most employees used it for invoice reconciliation. I used it to map patterns. I entered the dates from Claire's vacation and cross-referenced every charge tied to our joint accounts. One payment stood out immediately. A $98 rideshare transaction from Cabo to a private marina at 11:42 p.m. on the fourth night of the trip. Return trip at 3:16 a.m. 2 passengers. I enlarged the metadata and saw the booking email tied to Claire's personal account instead of the group reservation. My jaw tightened slowly. People hiding affairs always slip on logistics. Affairs thrive on emotion until receipts enter the room. Then I checked Ryan Mercer's public social media again. He posted nothing from Cabo. Smart man. But one tagged image from another account caught my attention. A blurry background shot from the Marina restaurant. Timestamp, 12:07 a.m. Ryan sat at the edge of the frame, wearing the same silver Rolex. Across from him sat a blonde woman in a white dress with her face turned away from the camera. Claire owned that dress. I bought it for our anniversary 8 months earlier. Suddenly, every conversation from the last year started replaying differently inside my head. Claire pushing for combined retirement restructuring. Claire suggesting I add her to the commercial land investment outside Odessa. Claire encouraging larger life insurance coverage after my promotion. At the time, I heard partnership. Now I heard financial positioning. My phone buzzed again. New text from Claire downstairs. Mom wants to plan a baby shower early because of the holidays. Baby shower. The trap kept expanding outward before the foundation even settled. I stared at the message while another realization crawled across my spine. Claire had skipped one major step every pregnant woman I knew usually handled first. She never showed me a doctor report. Never showed ultrasound scheduling. Never showed medical paperwork. Only the pregnancy test. Only emotion. Only pressure. Then a second text appeared beneath the first one. A photo. Claire smiling beside her mother at the kitchen island. In the corner of the image sat a blue folder partially opened beside her purse. Across the tab, typed in black capital letters, I read 3 words that froze my blood cold. Paternity acknowledgement form. I zoomed in on the photo until the pixels blurred at the edges. Claire smiled beside her mother while that blue folder sat half-hidden near her purse like a loaded weapon somebody forgot to lock away. Paternity acknowledgement forms usually appear after birth. Hospitals push them when fathers sign legal responsibility before DNA disputes surface. Claire already had one prepared before a doctor even confirmed anything in front of me. That changed everything. I saved the image into a private encrypted folder I used for contract negotiations and opened a fresh document. Timeline. Dates. Transactions. Phone records. Behavioral shifts. My cursor moved faster as adrenaline sharpened every memory from the last 6 months. Claire suddenly pushing for access to my deferred bonus accounts. Claire asking detailed questions about survivorship clauses tied to my commercial investments. Claire pushing me to refinance the house into a newer 30-year structure despite favorable equity already sitting in place. At the time, her questions sounded ambitious. Now they sounded strategic. Marriage teaches you a dangerous habit. You stop auditing the person sleeping beside you. I reopened our shared cloud drive and checked document activity logs. Claire accessed our estate planning file 3 times during her Cabo trip. She downloaded copies of my retirement account statements at 1:13 a.m. the same night she took the marina ride with Ryan Mercer. My throat tightened slowly. She was building something while I was still defending the foundation. Downstairs, laughter drifted faintly through the floorboards. Her mother had already entered grandmother mode. Baby names, family plans, social announcements. Claire weaponized momentum because momentum crushes hesitation. The faster emotions spread, the harder facts can catch up. I opened another browser and searched Ryan Mercer deeper this time. Business networking profiles, public records, litigation databases. One result stopped me cold. 2 years earlier, Ryan settled a paternity-related civil dispute in Dallas County. Confidential agreement. Sealed financial terms. My jaw flexed hard enough to ache. Patterns matter. Men repeat appetites long before consequences catch them. I copied every record into my folder and checked the timestamp again. 11:48 p.m. Then another memory surfaced from 3 months earlier. Claire standing in our kitchen asking strange hypothetical questions while pouring wine. If something happened to you on a job site, how long would insurance payouts take? I laughed back then because pipeline work carries risk and spouses ask uncomfortable questions sometimes. Now every conversation sounded like rehearsal material. My phone buzzed again. Claire this time. Mom invited Pastor Bennett for brunch Sunday. We should tell him together. Pastor. Church. Public witnesses. Claire kept widening the circle around the pregnancy because larger audiences create larger pressure. If I questioned paternity later, she could frame me as unstable, cruel, paranoid, emotionally absent. Men lose public sympathy fast when pregnancy enters the room. I typed. Back carefully. Sunday sounds good. 3 dots appeared instantly. She had waited with the phone already in her hand. I love you, she replied. I stared at the message without answering. Love had started sounding procedural in this marriage. Like paperwork. Like signatures. Like obligations waiting inside folders. I closed my laptop and headed downstairs. Claire stood near the sink scrolling through baby furniture on her phone while her mother flipped through family photo albums, already planning nursery pictures. Claire looked up and smiled softly when she saw me. I knew you would settle down, she said. Settle down. Another revealing phrase. She expected resistance from the start because she already understood the math underneath the pregnancy timeline. I walked closer and kissed the top of her head lightly. Her shoulders relaxed immediately. She thought she regained control. That was fine. Calm men gather more truth than angry ones. Then her phone lit up against the counter beside me. Ryan Mercer's name flashed across the screen for less than 1 second before Claire snatched it so fast she almost dropped the device. Claire recovered fast after the phone slipped from her hand. Too fast. She flipped the screen face down against the counter and forced out a small laugh that sounded thinner than usual. Nicole keeps changing brunch plans, she said while sliding the phone toward her purse. Lie. Reflexive. Immediate. Her pulse fluttered visibly near her neck, while her mother kept talking about nursery colors completely unaware she was standing inside a collapsing structure. I grabbed a bottle of water from the refrigerator and watched Claire carefully. People reveal fear through timing. She moved differently now. Sharper. More alert. Her eyes kept checking whether I believed her. That meant she still lacked certainty about how much I knew. Good. Uncertainty makes careless people sloppy. I have an early site review tomorrow, I said calmly. Might stay overnight near Odessa. Claire relaxed again. Another release. She wanted distance right now because distance bought her time to stabilize whatever narrative she was building. That project again, her mother asked. I nodded once. Pressure valve replacement audit. Real enough to sound routine. Claire stepped closer and touched my chest softly. You work too much, she whispered. Same line she used whenever conversations drifted toward accountability. Emotional fog. Redirect. Reconnect. I kissed her forehead lightly and headed upstairs before my face betrayed anything. The second my office door closed, I reopened the phone records. Ryan Mercer's number appeared again 32 minutes after Claire grabbed her phone downstairs. 7-minute outgoing call. She moved fast to contain damage. I opened another application tied to our family cellular plan and checked device location syncing. Claire disabled hers during the Cabo trip. Smart. Except she forgot the tablet she left at home still mirrored portions of her cloud account. I accessed the backup logs carefully and found fragments of deleted searches. Texas paternity acknowledgement reversal. Husband legal father before DNA. Community property pregnancy rights. My stomach turned colder with each line. This was never panic after a mistake. This was planning. Structured. Researched. Deliberate. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. The worst part of betrayal arrives when memories lose their original shape. Every anniversary dinner. Every conversation about starting a family. Every smile during mortgage paperwork. Your brain starts reopening scenes like corrupted files searching for the first crack. Then another memory hit me hard enough to tighten my chest. 3 weeks before Cabo, Claire pushed aggressively for joint access to my private brokerage account holding the land royalties from my grandfather's property outside Fort Stockton. I refused politely because those assets sat under a separate family trust my father established years earlier. Claire acted irritated for almost 2 days afterward. At the time, I blamed stress. Now I saw strategy colliding with legal barriers. I opened the trust documents and reviewed beneficiary structures carefully. Thank God for my father. The royalties, mineral rights, and investment distributions remained protected under inherited asset clauses unless I voluntarily merged them into marital holdings. Claire never gained access. Maybe that frustrated her enough to accelerate everything else. My phone buzzed again around midnight. Unknown number. I answered quietly. Heavy breathing filled the line for 2 seconds before a woman finally spoke. You are Ethan Walker, right? Her voice sounded tight, controlled, angry. Yeah. My name is Melissa Mercer. Silence settled hard inside my office. Ryan's wife. I think our spouses spent more than a vacation together, she said flatly. Then she dropped the sentence that shattered the last piece of uncertainty I still carried. And I think Claire is trying to pin his baby on you before he files for divorce next month. Melissa Mercer spoke like somebody who had spent weeks swallowing broken glass. Precise, controlled, exhausted. Ryan started pulling money out 3 months ago, she said quietly. Separate account. Cash withdrawals. Hotel charges tied to work trips that never existed. I leaned back in my chair and opened a fresh document beside the timeline I already built. Every sentence she gave me lined up with something Claire had done on her side. 2 people running the same playbook usually share more than a vacation. Why call me now? I asked. Melissa exhaled sharply through the phone. Because Ryan filed draft divorce paperwork yesterday. My cousin works at the clerk's office. The filing mentions irreconcilable differences and pending paternity complications. Pending paternity complications. Legal language wrapped around my marriage like a tightening cable. I rubbed my jaw slowly while she kept talking. He thinks you are going to sign first because Claire said you are predictable, stable, easy to pressure with family expectations. That one landed harder than I expected. Predictable. Claire spent years studying my habits because marriage teaches people where your emotional pressure points live. Responsibility, reputation, family image, duty. She understood exactly which buttons to push. Melissa, I said calmly, do you have proof? Silence stretched for 2 seconds. Then my inbox pinged. 3 files arrived immediately. Resort receipts. Screenshots. A photo of Ryan and Claire sitting together at the Marina restaurant during the Cabo trip. His hand rested against her leg under the table like he already belonged there. My chest tightened, but anger never fully arrived. Something colder replaced it. Clarity. Melissa lowered her voice. There is more. Another file hit my inbox. Audio recording. I clicked it instantly. Claire's voice filled my office through the speakers. Clear. Sharp. Familiar. Ethan will sign if I push hard enough early. Once his name hits the birth paperwork, Texas law gets messy. My pulse slowed instead of rising. That scared me more than rage would have. Ryan laughed softly in the recording. And if he asks questions? Claire answered without hesitation. Then I cry. My mother already believes me. His church people will pressure him too. I closed my eyes for one long second while the recording kept running. 20 minutes earlier downstairs, she kissed my forehead and talked about brunch plans. Now I sat in my office listening to my wife strategize paternity fraud like a business negotiation. Melissa finally broke the silence. I thought you deserved the truth before they buried you under paperwork. Thank you, I said quietly. And I meant it. We ended the call after exchanging copies of every document we had collected so far. The second the line disconnected, I opened my legal contacts list and called Daniel Reeves, the attorney who handled several commercial contract disputes for my company. He answered on the second ring. Ethan, I need a private meeting tomorrow morning, I said. Family law, asset protection, emergency level. Daniel paused immediately. Understood. Bring everything. I spent the next 2 hours building duplicate evidence folders across encrypted drives and external storage devices. Phone records, financial transactions, metadata, audio files, screenshots. I documented every timeline inconsistency tied to Claire's pregnancy claims because courts respect organized facts more than emotional speeches. Around 2 a.m., I heard soft footsteps outside my office door. Claire opened it slowly, wearing one of my old college sweatshirts. Barefoot, vulnerable, familiar. The version of her I spent years protecting. You are still awake? She asked softly. I minimized the legal documents instantly. Could not sleep. She walked over and sat carefully on the edge of my desk. I hate tension between us, she whispered while resting her hand against her stomach. performance layered over instinct. Even now, she kept reinforcing the pregnancy physically. Friday will make everything feel real, she said gently. Once you hear the heartbeat, this whole rough patch disappears. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. Yeah, I said evenly. Friday changes everything. Claire smiled with visible relief and leaned down to kiss my cheek before leaving the office. The second she closed the door behind her, my email refreshed automatically. New incoming message. Sender, Claire Walker. Recipient, Ryan Mercer. Timestamp, 13 minutes earlier. Subject line, he still suspects less than you think. Friday arrived with the kind of silence that feels engineered instead of natural. Claire moved through the morning carefully, almost gently, like somebody trying to preserve fragile glass before an inspection. She made coffee. She touched my shoulder twice. She smiled longer than usual. Every action carried intention now that I understood the architecture underneath it. People who hide affairs eventually stop behaving like spouses and start behaving like negotiators. I spent the drive to the clinic reviewing legal notes Daniel Reeves sent me before sunrise. Texas family courts weigh conduct heavily when financial deception intersects with paternity disputes. Timing matters. Documentation matters more. Daniel already drafted emergency asset separation paperwork tied to my brokerage accounts, inherited trust structures, and commercial royalty distributions. He moved fast because wealthy divorces become blood sport once manipulation enters the record. Claire sat beside me scrolling through nursery furniture while occasionally resting her hand against her stomach. Reinforcement behavior. Every few minutes, she reminded me visually what role she expected me to play. Father. Provider. Signature. Obligation. She finally broke the silence halfway there. I talked to Pastor Bennett last night, she said softly. He thinks this baby could heal a lot between us. Heal. Interesting word choice. Claire spoke like our marriage problems existed before Cabo instead of because of Cabo. Revision starts early when somebody prepares to rewrite history. Did he? I asked calmly. He said families survive rough seasons when husbands lead with grace. Grace. Another pressure point. Religion. Reputation. Masculinity. Claire stacked emotional leverage from every angle because she feared factual leverage. We reached the clinic 15 minutes early. She checked us in immediately before I even sat down. Fast movement again. Push paperwork before hesitation grows. The receptionist handed Claire a clipboard thick with intake forms and insurance verification pages. Claire flipped directly to the signature sections and slid the clipboard toward me with a practiced smile. Can you fill out the guarantor information? She asked sweetly. Guarantor. Financially responsible party. My eyes drifted lower across the paperwork until I found the section already highlighted in yellow marker. Presumed father acknowledgement. Claire highlighted it before we arrived. I picked up the pen slowly while she watched my face. You already filled most of this out, I said evenly. Just trying to save time, she answered quickly. Save time. Another revealing phrase. Claire wanted signatures before questions. I signed only the insurance authorization and left every paternity-related section blank. Her jaw tightened almost instantly. Tiny movement. Tiny crack. The nurse called us back before Claire could press harder. Inside the exam room, Claire shifted into performance mode again. Soft voice. Fragile smile. Hand resting protectively against her stomach every few seconds. The doctor entered carrying a tablet and greeted us warmly before reviewing intake notes. First pregnancy? She asked. Claire nodded enthusiastically. We are very excited. I stayed quiet while the doctor reviewed estimated conception dates. Then she paused suddenly and frowned at the screen. Claire's posture stiffened beside me. What? The doctor rotated the tablet slightly. Your hormone levels from yesterday's blood draw show irregular progression for the timeline you reported. Claire blinked rapidly. What does that mean? It means conception likely occurred earlier than you estimated. Silence flooded the room hard enough to feel physical. Claire's fingers curled tightly around the edge of the exam chair. I watched her throat move once before she forced out a nervous laugh. Maybe I mixed up dates during vacation planning. The doctor nodded politely and kept scrolling. Possible. Based on the numbers, conception appears closer to 8 weeks ago than 5. 8 weeks. Claire stopped breathing for half a second. Because 8 weeks ago I was in Oklahoma supervising emergency pipeline repairs while she stayed home in Houston alone. Then the doctor smiled casually and added the sentence that shifted the entire room sideways. Also, according to your intake history, I see previous prenatal consultations already started under another emergency contact name before today. Ryan Mercer. The room locked up instantly after the doctor said Ryan Mercer's name. Claire's entire body froze beside me. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the chair hard enough for her knuckles to pale. People spend months building lies and still collapse when truth arrives from an unexpected direction. The doctor looked between us slowly, confusion creeping into her expression. I assumed Mr. Mercer was family, she said carefully while checking the tablet again. Claire snapped into motion fast. Too fast. There has to be a mistake, she said sharply. Her voice carried panic for the first time since this entire nightmare started. Raw panic. Unfiltered. The doctor frowned slightly. His name appears as your original emergency contact from the intake consultation 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. The number landed like a steel beam through wet concrete. Claire opened her mouth again, but this time words stalled halfway out. Her breathing shortened. Her eyes flicked toward me, searching for anger, movement, reaction, anything she could pivot against emotionally. I gave her nothing. Calm destroys manipulative people because calm leaves them alone with their own performance. The doctor sensed tension immediately and excused herself to verify paperwork. The second the door shut, Claire turned toward me so quickly the chair squealed against the floor. Ethan, listen to me, she whispered urgently. This looks worse than it is. Worse than it is. Interesting phrase. She skipped denial completely and moved straight into damage control. Ryan helped schedule an appointment while I was traveling because you were working, she continued rapidly. That is all. I watched her carefully while she spoke. Sweat formed near her hairline despite the cold air inside the clinic. Her hands trembled slightly against her lap. Every polished layer finally started cracking apart under pressure. 6 weeks ago? I asked evenly. You told me you found out days ago. Claire swallowed hard. I was scared. Of what? She looked away immediately. There it was. The question she could not survive. Silence stretched between us long enough for her breathing to turn uneven. Then the manipulation returned. Tears gathered instantly in her eyes like somebody flipped a switch behind them. Please, she whispered. Do not do this here. Here. Public setting. Witnesses nearby. Claire still thought location-controlled behavior. She expected me to explode eventually because explosive men become easy to redirect. Easy to frame. Easy to survive. Instead, I reached calmly into my leather folder and placed 3 documents across the counter between us. First, the resort receipts tied to the Cabo Suite upgrade. Second, the phone logs connecting her to Ryan Mercer nearly 50 times during the trip. Third, printed screenshots from her own deleted emails. Claire stared at the papers like somebody watching a floor collapse beneath her feet. Her tears stopped instantly. Real fear replaced them. You went through my accounts, she whispered. Wrong question again. Guilty people always attack discovery methods instead of facts. You try to make me legally responsible for another man's child, I said quietly. My voice stayed steady enough to make her visibly shake harder. You researched paternity laws before you even told me about the pregnancy. Claire's lips parted slowly. No response came out this time. Because facts leave fewer escape routes than emotions. The clinic door opened again, and the doctor stepped back inside carrying another file. She stopped immediately after seeing the documents spread across the counter. Claire wiped her face quickly and stood up. We are leaving, she snapped while grabbing her purse. Then her phone buzzed loudly against the chair beside her. Ryan Mercer. Incoming call. The name lit up bright enough for all 3 of us to see it clearly. Claire lunged for the phone, but the doctor glanced from the screen to me with sudden understanding settling across her face. And that was the exact moment Claire realized she had finally lost control of the room. Claire grabbed her phone with shaking hands and stormed out of the exam room before Ryan's call finished ringing. The doctor looked at me carefully, then at the paperwork scattered across the counter. She had seen enough to understand the shape of the situation even without details. Mr. Walker, she said quietly, you may want independent legal guidance before signing anything connected to paternity or financial responsibility. I nodded once. Already handled. That answer surprised her. Most men arrive at betrayal emotionally naked. I arrived prepared. Claire waited near the lobby doors, gripping her purse so tightly the leather bent around her fingers. Her face carried the stunned expression people wear after realizing the plan in their head collided with reality. "We need to talk privately," she hissed the second I walked closer. "We already did," I answered calmly. "You just forgot I was listening." Her eyes watered instantly again, but the tears looked different now. Less strategic. More desperate. "Ethan, please," she whispered. "Ryan was supposed to leave Melissa months ago. Things got complicated." Complicated. Amazing how people shrink betrayal into vocabulary small enough to survive hearing out loud. I studied her face for a long moment and realized something strange. The anger finally faded. Once truth arrives completely, rage loses purpose. I saw Claire clearly for the first time in years. Smart. Manipulative. Terrified. A woman who spent months building legal traps because she feared instability more than dishonesty. "You tried to attach me to another man's child through fraud," I said evenly. "You researched laws before you even told me about the pregnancy." She shook her head rapidly. I panicked. "No," I replied quietly. "You planned." That sentence hit harder than shouting ever could. Claire looked away immediately because deep down she knew it was true. Her mother called right then. Claire stared at the phone screen but never answered. Probably because every story she told over the last week just collapsed inside that clinic. Pastor Bennett would hear eventually. Friends would hear eventually. Ryan's wife already knew. Lies move fast until evidence moves faster. I reached into my folder and handed Claire a sealed envelope. She frowned before opening it slowly. Divorce petition. Temporary financial separation order. Asset protection filing. Her lips parted slightly as she scanned the documents. "You filed already?" she whispered. "Last night." Real fear entered her face again. She flipped through the pages faster once she realized the filings excluded my inherited trust assets, commercial royalties, and separate investment accounts completely. Daniel moved aggressively after reviewing the evidence. Claire finally understood she failed to corner the stable provider she spent months calculating around. "You protected everything," she said softly. "I protected what my father taught me to build carefully," I answered. Big difference. She looked like she wanted to argue, cry, scream, negotiate, all at once. Instead, she asked the question that mattered most to her. "So that is it. 20 years together, and you just walk away?" I stared at her for a few seconds before answering, because that question deserved honesty. "You walked away first," I said quietly. "You just expected me to finance the trip." Claire's composure finally broke after that. Tears spilled down her face, while people moved through the clinic lobby pretending not to notice. Public humiliation terrifies manipulative people because public image usually powers the manipulation itself. I turned and walked toward the exit without another word. My phone buzzed once before I reached the parking lot. Message from Daniel Reeves. Court approved temporary financial freeze on all joint withdrawals above $5,000. Also, Ryan Mercer attempted wire transfer activity this morning tied to Claire's account. I stopped for 1 second staring at the screen while the weight of everything settled deeper into my chest. Betrayal rarely begins with passion. It begins with entitlement. Somebody decides your loyalty looks easier to exploit than respect. I slid my phone back into my pocket and looked straight ahead. The strange part about losing trust is this. Once the illusion dies, peace arrives faster than expected. Because the truth may break your heart for a season, but deception would have buried your entire future.